Hi, folks. This is Louis Hertham, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit HBO series Westworld. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons. Alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And this is our Telegraph edition where we look back on this week's episode of Westworld and provide our feedback on the top listener emails and voicemails for the week. This is the creme de la creme of everything we received, both from people writing in to hosts at shatontv.com and visiting shatpod.com/TV and using the SpeakPipe feature to leave us voicemails. We had more than ever this week. It is a new record for Westworld Season 4. Big D is back with us to share his thoughts as well. So this is the first time this season, I believe, that we've had all three hosts for a Telegraph. We're very excited to do it.
It is. And I want to thank you both for holding down the fort. Last week, I was in Brazil. There was a family event going on. You guys were great to hold it down. And then upon returning yesterday, I tested positive for COVID. So I've been having an interesting week. But the great thing for me, like I told Ash, is that I was able to now take the place of a listener. I was able to watch an episode, go right to the Instacast, then listen to the deep dive. And I got to be honest, I have a newfound respect for the podcast. I see what you guys bring and what the podcast brings to the enjoyment and understanding of the episode. So thank you both, and I'm glad to be back.
I got to tell you, one of my favorite things is to listen to Shat the Movies on episodes I'm not on, because it's the most entertained I am by the podcast. It's like, oh, cool. I don't know what they're going to say. It's like a new experience.
Yeah.
For those of you who did write in or did call in, if your email doesn't make the podcast, that doesn't mean we don't see it. We read all of them, and they all appear on shatpod.com/TV. You can go to the Westworld Telegraph section of the website and check it out. Big D posts them all there, and we do respond. Also, some of these emails are shortened just to get to the meat of it or to bring up one particular dimension of that message that's different from what anybody else wrote in. So do go to the website, check them out in their entirety, because there's lots of good stuff that we don't necessarily get to, especially on some of the longer ones. So without further ado, let's get started with a voicemail about Christina from Kat.
Hey, Shat on Pod. I wanted to call and talk to you about Peter Meyer. I think much like Abernathy was played by one host and then was replaced once he started glitching, I think the original Peter Meyer was around before, 20 years ago, the last generation. And that's why his name is on the wall of that insane asylum that Dolores goes to visit. That person was in his loop. He did his thing. He lived his story. And at some point, he was replaced by one of those children, by someone of the second generation, to fulfill his loop. Just like Abernathy was replaced, just like Clementine was replaced. And I think Christine herself is Charloris's attempt at procreation. Hear me out. She wanted to give her quote-unquote offspring the opportunity to live a life without the trauma of Westworld and everything that happened afterwards. So she made a new body that looks like a Dolores. She gave her a life that she thinks is going to make her happier. And she is on this loop where she can start to become self-aware in a safe space. Thanks so much. Love you guys.
The only thing that I would say that I find difficult about this theory is that if she's going to create a better world for offspring, you think she would give her like a cooler job, right? You think she would make her life better, like she'd be like super wealthy or, you know, something like that if it were her child. I do buy the idea that, you know, hosts, especially a Dolores host, might be similar to humans, that really, you know, the only reason we procreate at its core is to like throw our genetic material like forward into the future. It's like the most narcissistic thing ever to have children. And I could say that because I'm a parent. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, like, I could see her trying to recreate her own self, but I don't know. Cool theory. What a bummer if this is the job she gave her.
Yeah, but I think that's her. If you go back to the character, she liked to paint. She was kind of boring. She'd go out and stand by the river. So maybe this is her thing. You know, we might say she should be wealthy in this big life. That's not her, though. So I think we're seeing what she is at her core.
Charloris buys designer suits. I'm just going to throw that out there.
The part of this voicemail I want to focus on is actually the Peter part of it. Of all the theories we threw out about Peter's existence, this is not one that came to light. And I think it's brilliant, right? If we know, if we've seen hosts run in loops and be replaced, we had a replacement Clementine, we had a replacement Peter Abernathy. It's reasonable to believe that humans are replaced too. So it would solve the time issue. It's not time jumping. It's that there was a Peter and this is the new Peter. And this Peter glitched out. Thanks, Kat, for your voicemail. Next up, we have an email from Maria, also about Christina.
So Maria wrote in and said, "Hey guys, I love this show. I have a good theory for you. Halloris says to cryo-frozen William that it would be pointless to bring children into a world where they'd be consumed by jackals. Now that we've confirmed she's taking care of a whole generation of those jackals with the flies, I think she's ready to start bringing in her children. Christina is one of them. She looks like Dolores, maybe she's the first. Christina is a host-human hybrid not yet explored on the show. Maya is confirmed fly-controlled, and her only directive seems to be to help Christina. Meanwhile, Christina is shaping her world by simultaneously controlling narratives of those in the background. Halloris is allowing Christina to write her own narrative, her own personality, drives, etc., with some help from the environment. I don't think they're trying to keep her on loop. I think they're helping her to avoid it. Maya constantly asks her to go out and have new experiences, rather than just wake up, work, paint, rinse, and repeat. Also, this week, Maya begged her to go out because she needed a night off, not out, according to subtitles. I think this is because if Christina gets stuck in a loop, Maya is forced by the fly control to find ways to get her off of it. So if hosts and humans are opposites, humans are born and then shaped by their environment. Halloris has flipped the script and has her host humans born to shape their environment, much as they do in The Sublime. Christina has a lot of what is in this world, where do I fit, what do I want vibes going on. And that's because she's influenced her world rather than being influenced by it. The danger comes when the world starts influencing her. Think the birds, homeless man, Peter. And that, again, comes from Maria.
So do we think this is her job? Like to keep Dolores on loop, or Chrissy? Like it's her willing job. She knows, oh, I got to clock in today. Got to get over there and talk to Chrissy. It's just subconscious. She just does it.
Yeah, I think that's what she's saying. I personally think this is brilliant, right? Like, I love this idea of this juxtaposition of humans being shaped by their environments and hosts shaping their environments. And you're right, Maria. We know in The Sublime, this is the MO. This is what they get to do. What does Akecheta say? He says it's a world of their own making. And so if she has created this world, perhaps to combine the theory between our voicemail and email is that Dolores created an offspring and created this world for that offspring or offsprings. I think that's interesting.
Thanks, Maria, for your email. Next up, we've got one from Chris V.
So Chris wrote in and said, "Hi, love the show. I would like to express my theory that Christina is actually the last iteration of Lawrence that we saw at the end of season 3. I'm thinking that Dolores somehow found that out and extracted the marble out of his head and is now probing it and stuff to try and figure out where the key to the Sublime is. I'm also starting to think that Dolores will eventually attempt, if she doesn't already, to make her own Sublime or link to the Sublime, but still needs to figure out a way to make or find the key. Also, just to note, Frankie should instantly remember Maeve since she saved her life in the past, season 4, episode 1. So hopefully she comes off as pumped to see Maeve since she's already kind of knows that she's a sword-wielding badass. Thanks, Chris V.
This one's a little bit crazy to me. We're going back to Lawrence. I think there's got to be better explanations than that.
Yeah.
I was going to give some crazy train there, but
I don't see the Lawrence thing happening. The part of this email that struck me as interesting was Frankie remembering Maeve. I mean, I understand if she doesn't remember her as there's dust covering her face and they're like removing her body from the desert sands. But if we see the first time she encounters her, she doesn't remember. Like, listen, I understand she might have been 8, 10 years old, whatever the hell at the time. But like, if a ninja woman host jumped out of nowhere and chopped a dude up with a sword, I think I would remember that no matter how old I got.
Agreed.
Thanks, Chris, for your email. Next up, we have one from Mark Shepard.
Mark says, "Hi, hosts. Love your podcasts. Loved episode 4. Love that many questions were answered, but some nagging questions. The return of Teddy. I love the scene with Teddy and Christina. So much double meaning in the dialogue. But if it is the real Teddy, how did he get out of the Sublime and who printed the body? Only really can mean it is a copy of Teddy then by Hale, which leads me to host copies of characters we've previously seen. For example, we saw the copy of the Colonel. He clearly had no idea of his previous persona. But Teddy seems to hint at he is aware of his past, so Hale can't have it both ways. More confusion regarding how pre-season 3 host human data is obtained. If it was on the servers at the Hoover Dam, it is locked and not accessible per MIB, or is it the Sublime? Wasn't the Forge destroyed? So how would Hale get pre-season 3 data? Keep up the good work, Mark Shepard, Minnesota.
I almost feel like in the 23 years, maybe they have gotten access to it. Because that's one of the ways that you'd be able to rebuild them. Caleb, you can explain it away. Maybe it's something to do with the military implant that was also recording emotions and experiences. But for some of these other hosts, it might go back to what Gene had said when he was talking about why she would need Caleb, is there's a sentimentality. That maybe the sentimentality of bringing Teddy back, she could use her own memories to somehow bring him back. But the data's got to come from somewhere.
Thanks, Mark, for your email. And speaking of the limbic implants in Caleb, we've got a voicemail from Nate asking about those.
Hey, guys. Just got done listening to your Instacast episode. In the episode, you guys had brought up the question, what could have allowed Caleb to possibly resist Charlorus's orders there at the end? My theory when I first saw that would be the military implant he has in his mouth might have something to do with it. Look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thanks.
So for those not familiar with what a limbic implant would do, we saw them in season 3 and the effects that they had on people. The limbic system is the part of your brain that is focused on behavior and emotional responses. So episode 4, when we see the screen that shows the part of his brain that's being affected that Charlorus is holding, it is the limbic system. However, I came to believe from season 3 that these were fairly common, right? That these were not like a thing that only a few rare people had. So making him like some sort of a unique person just because of his limbic implant doesn't seem to make sense. Thanks, Nate, for your voicemail. Next up, we have an email from Anne asking why didn't he just kill Charlorus?
Anne says, why? Why didn't Maeve and Caleb kill Charlorus instead of taking her with them? Why not just destroy her pearl? What could have changed that situation to the worse? I don't understand. And I have to tell you, Anne, this really annoys me too. I think the only answer here is that if you kill Charlorus, you kill the big bad. So what are they going to do for the rest of the season? I mean, I don't think there's any legitimate reason why they wouldn't have otherwise, because it makes no sense. This is the whole James Bond thing, right? Where they don't kill the villain immediately and the villain tells them their whole plan and all of that. Like, that's exactly what's unfolding here. And I just don't think they can get rid of Charlorus yet.
Thanks, Anne, for your email. Next up, we have one from Dave Wright in San Diego, a repeat writer.
Dave says, guys, I love the episode from a dramatic standpoint with lots of clever reveals. I'm having a problem with the logic of Caleb's timeline, and maybe you folks can help me out. I assume that the initial loop that Maeve and Caleb actually went through was in a real park at the Temperance site. In that loop, both Caleb and Maeve are killed, with Caleb dying in the control room with Halores. What was the point of infecting the biological Caleb with the parasites if he is simply killed by Halores' men, rendering thus him useless? How could the parasite have any effect on him after he was revived in a host's non-biological body and neural processor? Also, if the plan is to use Maeve's overvoltage powers to destroy the tower infrastructure and all the currently infected humans, how will that also eliminate the surviving flies that would still be able to pass on the parasite? Let me know if you can help. Dave Wright.
So if I'm remembering this correct, the fidelity test is to see how accurate the copy was. You do that up until the very end of the recording. So they went into the park, he got infected, they go through their little kidnap of Hale, they take her out to the construction site. And that's the end. That's where it all went down. So you wanted everything that happened before that was necessary to check on the fidelity of the copy. So maybe the resistance part was the last thing that happened. Then he actually shot Maeve, and that's where it got a little blurry. But I think it's truly what happened, and that's why we saw it and he went through it.
Thanks, Dave, for your email. Moving on from Caleb, let's get into the park with a voicemail from Matt from San Diego.
Hey, Shat Crew, Matt from San Diego again. Couple thoughts. The infected folks. So once the flies get at these humans, we assume that their blood turns black, right? The senator's wife, when she's shot in the head, we see the black goo. And we assume that, hey, that's a telltale sign that these folks are infected. However, when we go to this recent episode and the folks that are under control via virus by the humming noises, when they are prompted to shoot themselves, we see red blood. So what can we assume from that little tidbit? Did the production folks just forget to change the color there? Is this a more refined version of the virus that keeps the blood red in color? Or are these hosts that are simulating shooting themselves just as an elaborate ruse to trap Maeve and Caleb? What is the deal? What can we read into way too much about the color of these folks' blood? What are your thoughts, my chat friends?
Well, I think Charlora said that the suicides, the early copies, the guy in the Hoover Dam, and then also the senator, those were early versions, early tests. Even they were black. I got the vibe that these that we saw down on the second level of the park were hosts, just like Frankie. So, or the other option is they'd only been infected a little bit, and maybe over time the blood turns black. And it seemed like this was a pretty quick test. Stack the blocks, get the gun, load the gun, shoot yourself in the head. So maybe it takes a little while.
I don't know if we have confirmation that that's their blood, because remember, they're infecting the maggots with the black goo. So maybe like the fly secrete something once they're in there. Maybe the parasite secretes something. I don't know necessarily that it's their blood, but it's something that shows that they're infected.
Thanks, Matt, for your voicemail. Next up, we have a voicemail asking if Bernard is dead.
Hi guys, this is Behrank. I had a question. So when the host man in black tells Maeve that there is no us anymore and all your friends are gone, doesn't that mean that Bernard is also already dead in that timeline? Because Charlores knows that Bernard is alive and has the key. So this last look with Caleb that we saw during the episode, the 237th iteration, is probably taking place after the fact that Bernard has done whatever he is up to in the future and died. And I also think the drone didn't shoot Bernard immediately because he is a host and you don't want to destroy your own assets in a war. So maybe you just needed further analysis. I also had a quick note about what Gene said about the outliers' genetics. So if Gene is actually right, I would put a whole group of outliers and their only duty is to fuck each other 24 hours a day in order to repopulate the earth with outliers, spread the outliers infection. So how's that, Charlores? A taste of your own medicine. Thank you guys so much for the pod. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I don't know about Bernard being dead. I mean, that would be assuming that they actually know of every single host out there. Now, it does seem that they did have a campaign to go out there and hunt down sentient hosts. But, I mean, Bernard stayed pretty much on the DL, like he was hiding out in one place with Stubbs. I mean, Stubbs is still around too. But I get what you're saying is that maybe he's died somewhere in the interim. I would chalk it up to Man in Black not really knowing exactly everything that's going on in the world. As for the drone not being able to target him, though, I do like this, explanation that it was probably trying to identify target. And in the time it was trying to identify it, what I don't understand is it saw something there. Why doesn't it go in for a closer look as opposed to zipping off? And as for outlier orgies, I'm all for it. Thanks for your voicemail. Next up, we have an email from Steve.
Steve writes in and says, hello. Hale was not too concerned when William got blown up, and she told Caleb that William could be rebuilt, so maybe his body was retrieved. Hale said Maeve, on the other hand, is something special. I'm surprised Maeve was still buried there for Bernard to find and that Hale hadn't accessed Maeve's powers. I guess we'll see. I hope we do. There seems to be some kind of either fidelity testing or narrative building going on with Christina, but the writers are keeping that reveal close to the vest. And episode 4 gives up a lot, but not enough to be sure what happens next. Thanks for your podcast. They're fun and annoying all at once, like using chopsticks. Steve.
So, Steve, exactly. Why did you not dig up Maeve? Why? Did they need some more excavating machinery or manpower? I think they had enough there. Was it because they didn't have a giant fan mounted on the back of a truck to blow off the dust? You have it. This is the biggest problem in this entire episode and season. If Maeve was there, buried under, let's presume, 5 feet of debris, 10 feet of debris, she's there. You don't turn your back on Jason Voorhees. Yep, you stabbed him in the head. Oh, he's dead. I can turn around and start to walk to safety. No, your enemy is always alive until you've seen them blown into a million pieces. You would never have left Maeve there. You found the Man in Black. They weren't close to each other? Stupid. If this turns out to be she just walked away, it's stupid.
Thanks, Steve, for your email. Next up, we have a pair of voicemails from Jen from Connecticut.
Hey, guys. This is Jen from Connecticut. I'm calling in about something you guys said in the Instacast. One of you mentioned how we don't see any older people in Christina's city. And I instantly thought of the homeless man who can see the tower. He seems to be the oldest person we've seen, And it connects to when Hale was saying that it took generation for the parasite to really take control. So he might be one of the older people in the city who aren't affected by the parasite, meaning he can still see the tower. He's one of the only ones that can see the tower. So there's nothing wrong with him. It's just his age and the fact that the parasite didn't work. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks. Hi again, Jen from Connecticut. Regarding my message I left before about the homeless man in Christina's city, over the course of the day, it dawned on me that he is homeless because he's not on a loop. If he's not controlled by the parasite, he doesn't have a job. He doesn't have a place in society. And so he is left at the mercy of anyone who's willing to give him anything, which, in all honesty, is probably the hosts visiting the park that is the city. Yeah, just thought I'd toss that out there. He's homeless because the parasite didn't work. He doesn't fit into Hale's weird society. Thanks for all you do, guys. Bye.
I mean, that would make outliers a lot easier to identify, for sure, but it would almost make them like too easy. I mean, I've been picturing these outliers more like in that really dumb YA film, Divergent, where like they aren't controlled by the mind control in that movie, but they live normal lives. But I do think that a job obviously keeps you on loop. But I mean, couldn't his loop be to be homeless as well? I mean, they also have like a daily routine. So I don't know. It's interesting.
I mean, it wouldn't be too hard. You wouldn't need a secret army to hunt down the outliers when they're standing on the corner screaming, "I hear the tower. I hear it. The birds can hear the tower." It doesn't take, she might have walked by him on lunch one day. Hale been like, "What's that dude doing over there? Can somebody pull the paper on him, pull a report?" I think you'd find him pretty quick. And the fact that he's still out there, I don't know what that says about people's observation about what's going on.
Well, from a pair of voicemails from Jen, we've got a pair of emails from Discount Dawn. The first one talking about the Great Robot Wars.
I have a lot of questions about the Great War that was fought between seasons. It started with the end of last season where Caleb, Maeve, and Dolores took down Rehoboam Prime. It ended presumably with Caleb and Maeve taking down the last Rehoboam by assaulting the whole 9 guards on duty. How many people were in the victory parade? 6? 7? This was the war that was so scarred Caleb? Discount Dawn.
Well, maybe we've seen that, the people after Rehoboam were like kind of soft. So maybe like war was really like a rough term. Maybe it was like the great robot human scuffle. Maybe people actually were a little too soft and hadn't been out there living hard. That the war doesn't seem to have done too much damage. Maybe 5 or 6 people like busted a nail or got a minor cut. It could be something like that, but people don't seem to be hardened by it.
One Discount Dawn also wrote in, every time we have seen a host replace a human, they have been dressed identically to the human right down to the jewelry. That means that they are spying on the humans and dressing the host before they leave to replace them. Does that mean that if the senator or his wife had changed their clothes, the mission would have been aborted so the host could be redressed? Why was the last Rehoboam where Maeve said they will pull out all the stops to protect guarded by exactly 12 lightly armed people? So Hale's plan is to have humans serve hosts and have their narratives written for them often as children. Doesn't that mean that she's going to have to look ahead and calculate something like we're going to need 6,000 plumbers, 1,800 steel workers, 5,700 teachers, so on and so forth, and then order those narratives written? Plus, she would have to balance birth rates, manage pandemics, etc. After all, your workforce of human servants needs to be maintained. It seems exhausting. Why does Stubbs order a sandwich at all? Why do any of the hosts eat or drink? They did it in the park to simulate realism, but out in the real world, there's no need. With Hale controlling everything, the humans can just be ordered to overlook anyone not eating or drinking. Discount Dawn.
Discount Dawn, you've given me an idea of how this should have gone down. Every time we have hosts coming to replace their human counterparts, they should be naked. It'd be way scarier, right? Senator truffling along through the yard with his dong just hanging out. If I were attacked by a me and that me was naked, it adds like 20% to the freaky factor.
Yeah, because you're also guaranteed that if I killed the real you, as long as I didn't have a puncture wound or stain the clothes with blood, they're there. Instead now, what kind of assets do you have to dedicate as a park to manufacture every possible piece of clothes the person has, and then you have to have it nearby? So you take down somebody, and I picture like a bunch of people behind the scenes running around, hair and makeup, Like, get the sweater. No, he's got the shorts on. Get the shorts. Okay, what sneakers does he have? He's got the Nikes. Let's go get him. And you run out there like a pit crew, woof, 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 change all the clothes, and you throw them back out there. It's a lot of work.
Well, and don't forget, Charlotte was killed by the naked version of her host. So it's happened before.
Yeah, that back in season 2 when they had the showdown, right?
Yeah, but that would be even more creepy. Like you said, Gene, a naked you coming at you. You would stop. You would stop them from running. You would cause them to come in closer and be like, what's going on? They're easier to kill. It's a win for all the way around.
Yo, if you saw a naked you running at you, you would stop and bring them closer?
No, I wouldn't run. It's why the key is to go slowly. Like the naked you comes out of the darkness, like the Charlores did.
I don't care what fucking
like,
speed naked me is moving. I'm running from that.
Well, it's because you've become aware. You're now sentient. But if you didn't know it was a possibility, you would think it was a twin Gene.
Who was naked.
Yes, your mind wouldn't immediately go to they're replacing me. You would think, wow, that naked guy looks a lot like me. I got to talk to him.
All right. From that, we're going to Jonathan's voicemail about what is the choice.
Hey guys, Jonathan from Vegas. It turns out that the Park Temperance in Vegas, Nevada, is really an incubator for the apocalypse. I kind of wanted to know what your take was on this question because I don't know the answer to it. Each season had a name. It started with the maze, then the door, then the new world, and this is the choice. We're halfway through, and I don't think that we touched upon what we believe the reasoning was that they named things the way they are. I'm kind of curious to know what your thoughts are. Ash, I'm very sorry to hear about your grandma that passed away. It's because of the Shadon team that I got through my mom's passing, and I've been following you guys since 2015 for Shadon movies. So thanks for doing what you guys do, and please, I'd like to know what your thoughts are. God bless. You guys are the greatest, and you guys help me even want to watch this season even more.
Thanks, Jonathan. That's really kind. I think certain things like TV definitely get us through it. I also had COVID again recently. It's just burning through everyone. And I rewatched the entirety of The Leftovers because nothing makes me relate more to a post-COVID world than a show about, people who've disappeared from the planet. So I get it and I appreciate that. I'm so sorry about your mom.
Yeah, I'm sorry about your mom as well. To go back to your question, if you're talking about the flies, I think it's easier to spread this somehow from person to person. The flies thematically, they're okay. We'll tie it back to the first episode, but I think you don't need a big, like I said, the bug light, like the super spreader event within the park for flies to bite people. Make it contagious between humans. The humans go to the park, you get it, then you go home. It's like COVID. You give it to your family, then your family gives it to a coworker. That's how you spread it. Cycling humans through the park is a real difficult way to do it. So functionally, it's going to take a while, but thematically, I guess it works.
And as for the choice, Jonathan, I'm really worried that it comes down to Caleb, and I'm hoping that's not the case. I'm hoping they blow our minds with a much bigger concept. And listen, they've got 4 episodes to do it, so fingers crossed. Next up, we have an email from Joey G talking about Clementine.
When Joey wrote in and said, with Maeve about to seemingly be resurrected by Bernard and company in the next episode, and Teddy trying to wake up Christina/Dolores from her loop, we're seeing the Resistance Army being prepared to take on Dolores, host MIB, and her New World Order. But there is one major player in this war that is not being focused on that much. One which has the power and knowledge to tip the scales in favor of Bernard, Stubbs, Maeve, Caleb, and the others, and that is Clementine. I don't believe that host MIB erased her original personality when he came for her in episode 2. Rather, he did what Ford and the others who originally created the host did in the original parks and had her old build or personality overwritten or altered to make her loyal to himself and Dolores, which means her original personality is underneath the new. It's likely Maeve will learn all about her death and reprogramming by host MIB, and since she always cared deeply for Clem, you better believe that will be something that will set her off and make her determined to fight. And because of her talents and being able to remotely control other hosts, I can see host MIB sending her out to fight and kill or destroy Maeve and the others, but Maeve getting the upper hand and freezing her, thereby allowing the Resistance to bring her old self back. And this is where I think host MIB and Halloris both made a huge mistake in making her his secretary. In this time jump, she'll have been working for him for 23 years, and that means she will have heard and been privy to all of the inner workings of how this new host overlord world works. Sincerely yours, Joey G.
So, Joey, I'm going to come at this from a different angle. If you remember, Clem was weaponized before once by Hale. At the end of season 2, they gave her that piece of code. They reprogrammed her. So as she went host to host, she could use the mesh network, and she got them to actually start to kill each other at the gates of the Valley Beyond. And it caused all the hosts that we love to kill each other right there. Wouldn't it be ironic if that build obviously is still under there, because we've seen prior builds, if what ultimately does Hale in or Charloris in is that if Clem somehow accesses that and they use this now tower network to communicate and propagate that message, that she's the ultimate demise of all the hosts.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only other possibility other than making Clem a big deal, because they've kept her on for so long, is just that she's working on the cheap, right? They're like, yeah, we need a robot that kills people. It's Clementine, it's fine. Other than that, though, I mean, she's got to play some role in all of this. And I do get a sneaking suspicion. There's no evidence for this, just a gut feeling that those original core hosts, right, they're going to be the heroes that save the day. It seems like a very Westworld thing to do.
Are they going to end up in a church, you know, talking about their lives and getting ready to move on?
Big D, Joey also had a bone to pick with you about Westworld, the movie. He says it's a damn fine film.
Okay, he's just thrown all of his credibility out the window. It's a fine film for like the time, but it's go back and watch the fight when they go to like medieval world. It's comically bad. It's really, really bad.
All right, thanks, Joey, for your email. Next up, we have a voicemail from Tom W. from North Carolina.
Tom W. from North Carolina again. Holy crap, Westworld is back. Plain and simple. Great episode. Great way to tie things together. Great way to not keep us sitting there waiting and holding our breaths and trying to figure things out. They were straightforward, answered the questions. I will follow that up with saying this. I think that the key is in Frankie. I think there's something about her DNA that allows her to resist the power of Charloris. She probably got that from Caleb, since she's Caleb's daughter. So I think that's going to be the focal point of the rest of the season. The real weapon in the desert is her and not Maeve. But I will leave that to you guys and the crazy train. I ordered me industrial size tinfoil for next week. Hope to build me a beautiful cat. You guys have a great day and keep up the good work.
So normally I would never let anybody proclaim themselves Crazy Town ready or Crazy Train ready, but I will give it to them because there is no way that there's a genetic component to his blood that is going to turn Frankie into a super weapon. But I do like that better than the answer that Maeve is the super weapon. That's been buried for 23 years. I'm going to take everyone on the podcast right now back 23 years in human history. And I'm going to tell you the technology that was going on back then and see if any of these things could be a big secret weapon today to take down Google or Apple or Uber or anything, okay? Back in 1998, Apple introduced the iMac. Intel released the Celeron processor. PayPal was founded. Google filed for its papers to incorporate in California. Rockstar Games was founded. SQL was introduced. The ActionScript programming language was launched, and HD ROMs were introduced in February of 98. I don't think any of those technologies would anyway interfere with the world we live today. The likelihood that Maeve will somehow come back in and pull out her little like R2D2 USB connector or somehow like connect back in, she was struggling to be really any threat 23 years ago. If she has any input in this world we're seeing now in the future, it's laughable that the technology is not advanced enough to deal with this old ass computer. I'm going to just fall out of my chair. It might be the COVID, but I'm just going to fall out of my chair.
All right, Tom, thanks for your voicemail. Next up, we have an email from Shat on Stan.
Stan again, just wanted to know what you think of my idea for a Westworld game. The best version would obviously be VR, but you could also do it as standard, like an RPG, but instead of growing your own character, your behaviors and interactions lead to the development of the host. Every action recorded by the game, giving it a clearer picture of your techniques in order to make the final battle against the uprising host as challenging as it can be. The difficulty of the final battle would upscale the better you perform leading up to the final battle. It would be a challenge, but I think that could be the best game ever. Over and out, Stan.
Stan, I like this idea, but I feel like it's a description of those video games that I read about. And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And then I download it and then I just remove it from my machine in like an hour because I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like Death Stranding. I'm like, oh, Death Stranding sounds awesome. And you actually play like it's a walking simulator and I've got some kid in a tub that I'm supposed to carry around or something. I don't know. But in this, I like the idea though. The idea is that in most video games, you've got your character, they evolve as you play, you gain new capabilities, you gain new weapons and armor and stuff. In this case, your character stays exactly the same, but the shit you do actually develops the hosts differently, your enemies differently. Sounds like the hardest game in the world, Stan, but I like it.
So as a fan, I used to listen to Bald Move a lot, and they used to play the Telltale games. Where one decision leads to the next, it's more like the old books, like as you would read, and it'd be like, do you go down the tunnel? Turn to page 53. And they would always try to play these Walking Dead Telltale games, Black Hat. They would try to make every evil move, try to do everything bad to see if they could get the character to a really dark place. None of the games ever really did. I think a game where you can dictate the narrative would be great. If you want to play it evil, have the story go dark. Right now, it always leads you to the same old cookie cutter, one of a couple endings that are usually upbeat. A dark game that you have a choice of how you play affects it completely. I think it sounds interesting.
Thanks for your email, Shat on Stan. Next up, there's a voicemail from Big D's favorite, Emmett.
Shat family, Emmett here. Episode 4 off to a great start with Maeve saying, Rehuabem. Big D, flashback season 3. Love you guys. You're doing great.
Well, Emmett, if anybody knows the difficulty of words, I think everyone has a right to say words the way that they want. If I didn't remember the song, Rehoboam, I still would butcher it. So I'm willing to take Maeve's pronunciation however she wants to give it.
But don't be ashamed of the Rehoboam thing. We all still sing Rehoboam to remember how to say Rehoboam. But apparently we're all wrong. I mean, Tandy Way is an actress. All right. And finally, we have an email that's been waiting nearly, a month for all of us to be together so that we can read it. It comes from Matthew.
Matthew says, hey there, just a passing thought on the tower reference in the new season of Westworld. Could there be a reference to Stephen King's series, The Dark Tower? It has a tower at the center of all creation. Those who journey to the tower, the center of, as it were, the maze of creation, climb the tower and pass through, only to find themselves back at the start of a loop to start the journey again. But just a little different this time and with no memory of it happening before. Regards, Matthew. And I have to say, Matthew, I think every Stephen King fan, when they saw this tower and when they heard about a tower, immediately thought about the Dark Tower. Like, I think it's impossible not to. The only thing here is that one of the greatest parts about the novel series is that the tower is both physical and metaphorical. And there's all these beautiful metaphors that are related to it for like the journey of life and like the nature of mortality. And so I definitely think that Westworld could be doing that. But if they are, I'm this is just me, but I'm going to feel like the whole thing's like a giant ripoff of a really great series.
Thanks, Matthew, for writing in. I'm so glad we were able to get to that email. Again, if you'd like to write in for future episodes, host at shatontv.com. You can use the SpeakPipe feature at shatpod.com/TV. Just go to SpeakPipe and be sure to check out the website, read and reply to all of the email that is posted up there by Big D. And that concludes this week's episode of Shat on TV Westworld Telegraph. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat on TV. On Facebook, just search for Shat on TV Podcasts. The website is shatpod.com/TV. You can email us, host at shatontv.com, or everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a review that helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us Sunday for the next Westworld Instacast. He has COVID.
I do.
His brain is boiled.
I just want to remind you guys that I have recorded twice with you all with very active COVID, and nobody would have ever fucking known.
Oh, please.
We just didn't say anything about it.
I am hoping to get COVID 3 times so I can record 3 times and show Ash that we all can do it.
Y'all, my Westworld shit was on point even with COVID.
Really? Was it? Was it?
Gene Lyons.
All right.
We are recording.
Gene Lyons.
What?
I was on point even with COVID. Thank you.